Hi, friends. Host Eric here. I was talking to famous people, and man who will likely need to poo before too long. I didn't poo before starting the stream. What if you're the villain? Hi, Ron Allen Swan. Hey, for Juan. What if you're the villain? What if I'm the villain? I don't feel like the villain. I don't have one of those handlebar mustaches. You know, I don't think the Joker is at all an ENTP. It seems more like an ESFP to me. But who am I to say? Oh yeah, what would you do that makes you like a villain? Commit genocide? I always was telling you, Fawon, stop committing genocide. Why do you hate the Inuits so much? I mean, that's what people say. I agree with you. Email down Threx that I already put the poll up. Everyone would say Joker was an ENTP. Just like they said, the math, 58% of people said Eminem's an ENTP. I mean, the thing to remember is, of course, we know Joker's not an ENTP because he never says anything clever. It's not word-based at all. Rick Sanchez is a ENTP. Do you lock the trust of all your friends? Good morning, Jesus is Lord. Why is that ENTP? Why is protecting yourself someone who has nothing you can lose anymore ENTP? Like, the thing is, if you look at the storyline of the Joker, he allows him to get bullied indefinitely and then finally snaps. It's funny when people, I read that once in a comment, and it's funny people targeting my TI, you know. I don't remember which Joker was Dark Knight Joker, but if you go back to the 60s Batman TV show anyway, it's pretty clear that the Riddler's an ENTP or possibly an ENFP, but not the Joker. I mean, I tend to agree with you, for one, that ENTPs are never as cool as they think they are. Because, I think I'm pretty cool, but the reality is I'm faintly ridiculous. Okay, well, if you think the Riddler's an ENTP, then you definitely don't think the Joker's an ENTP also, because they're so vastly different from one another. Oh no. Sukaku, Lelouch's nemesis, to be an ESTP. It's hard to do ENTP villains. It really is. Well, for one, the fact is, well, the difference being one of them is word-based and the other one isn't. I'm sure she did a terrible job of it. It's hard to think of good ENTP villains. There really aren't very many. Why? Because they're so word-based, right? If you're doing things with words, you're not being that villainous. The most villainous ENTP I could think of, I mean, I have a good example. It's the captain in that the main character ends up killing in Fahrenheit 451. He's an ENTP and a bad guy. That's not a very good, well-known example. He uses straight up, like, clean sophistry, you know? Of course, the thing about the 60s Riddler is, I mean, here's the deal for everybody. Everybody needs to remember this. Real ENTPs and real INTPs make poor villains and heroes because we're not going out and doing shit that much. It's like Jim Carrey in The Mask is not an ENTP. He may be quirky and clever, you know. Steve Martin in Roxanne, there's an ENTP. I haven't seen those movies, Ron Alan Salon, so I don't know. I haven't really seen those movies with Jack Sparrow. I haven't seen any of them. Would you call bullshit on the Roxanne thing? I think Steve Martin and Roxanne is definitely an ENTP. And Steve Martin and Roxanne, I haven't seen it, so I don't know. Ron Alan Salon. Johnny Depp in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is definitely an ENTP. I mean, I just don't see, just because somebody's like quirky, and I think people mistake ENFPs. I mean, Jim Carrey's definitely not. That characters he played, maybe you could argue that. That's fine. It doesn't matter because we can't really determine that either way with characters, right? But Jim Carrey, the guy, is definitely not an ENTP. That kind of physical humor is not ENTP land. No way. James Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes books. I guess I'm not familiar enough to say, but maybe. I didn't say he was ENFP. I don't think he's NE. I don't think he's ENFP either. First of all, the guy's evil in ways that are atypical of action types. I think he's some kind of interface type, ENTJ, probably. Robin Williams was an ENFP. Okay. He's a good agreed upon ENFP to look at as an example of an ENFP comic, right? And you will notice how much more physical that humor is than, say, George Carlin, who is an acknowledged ENTP comic. And then look at Jim Carrey, and he's neither, right? Jim Carrey isn't commanding enough to be an ENTJ? I mean, I don't know what you're trying to get at. He does seem very FI in every interview or everything you see. But if you want to say it's higher than fourth slot, fine, but he's definitely still on the ENTP. I mean, he's so FI. It's ridiculous. This is somebody, it's like, even I can see the FI all over him. You got to read about the guy. You got to see some interviews or something, obviously. He's a scumbag, too. Quentin Tarantino, ENTP, I'd buy that. Okay, email networks. Well, obviously, you keep making random claims, so I'm not going to engage you anymore. If you want to talk about some aspect when it's real, then fine. But you read about the story about him getting sued for this girl who committed suicide. You realize what a scumbag he is and how that's totally not an action type. Whatever you want to say. He's something other than an action type. Either interface, knowledge, or deliberation, and he's not TI for sure. I mean, that's why I don't like arguing about MBTI. Because people don't use process analyses, and he didn't sue, he got sued. Basically, and it sounds like it's a pretty legit accusation to me. He slept with some married makeup woman that was on the set, and then basically talked her into killing herself. After he destroyed their marriage, Now, granted, he may not have destroyed the marriage. The marriage may have been on the rocks in the first place. Or maybe he did, though. I mean, if he's that famous, there's such a power disparity. Okay, well, I claim to have limited knowledge of Jim Carrey. If in fact you're more well-researched about him than I am, and know better than I about his whole shtick and what's going on, then it's possible you're right about it and I'm wrong. But based on his performances, his work, his kind of humor, I would say there's zero chances in ENTP. You know who's probably an ENTP? Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell's probably an ENTP. He might be an INFJ, but I seriously doubt it. I think he's an ENTP. But he could be an INFJ. I've seen INFJs display the kind of extroverted intuition bursts that I see from him sometimes. But he's probably an ENTP. I mean, I see no point in agreeing on that. We can just disagree. It is the fact that we disagree. That's not something that should require any itself agreement or disagreement. But it's like 58% of people thought Eminem's an ISTP. That's called failing to do any kind of process analysis, right? Because if you watch interviews of Eminem, he seems very much like an ISTP. I know, 58%, a broad majority says he's ISTP. And if you watch interviews of him, he seems rather like an ISTP in his affect. So, I mean, the thing about the Eminem question is, it comes down to what's a more reliable thing to judge his type on, his body of work or his interviews? I say his body of work. His body of work is clearly not that of an unipolar person. It's impossible to conceive of. Anything about extrovert and intuition, there's zero chance. And anything about Eminem, there's zero chance based on his body of work that he's an ISTP. And that's just how it is. Now, people who disagree with me, they look at his interviews and say, well, look at him in this interview. Well, I agree. His affect in interviews is that of an ISTP. I'm saying that's constructed. You can easily enough construct ISTP as an affect in an interview if you're an ENTP. You cannot emulate an ENTP in terms of body of work if you're an ISTP. He's an ENTP. It's slight possibility he's an INTP, but it's very slight. He's almost 100% sure an ENTP. It's like I listen to different rap all the time with Rachel in the car and stuff and go, like, here's an example of a good ESFP rapper. Dominique Young Unique. She's a good ESFP rapper. If you listen to her lyrics and everything, Jay-Z's probably an STP rapper. Probably ESTP, I would guess. I'm not as familiar with his body of work. Drake is probably also an ESTP rapper. It's possible that Jay-Z's an INFJ. He's got a lot more aesthetic sense than Drake does, That's possible. That's possible. Well, yeah, that's possible. I think Kanye is definitely an ENFJ. I think what's his name? Kendrick Lamar's an INFJ. Quote. There are all kinds of ridiculous Eminem song quotes that you could just say, tell me an ENTP didn't write this. I mean, he's an ENTP who did a lot better in terms of eliminating his dorkiness than most ENTPs. I guess that probably comes from growing up in the traumatic environment with all the abuse and stuff and having to be like quadruple tough in order to. No, Dre's an INFJ. Sorry about that, Ron. Alan Salon, definitely not INTJ. The thing that Dr. Dre has going for him more than anything else is this clarity about what's universally good. Whereas INTJs have clarity about process of doing, which just ends up, you just end up with a Dave Matthews Band and Rush and a bunch of complicated nonsense, You have a better case arguing that Donald Fagen, who's actually an INTP, was an INTJ than you'd ever have arguing Dr. Dre's an INTJ. I mean, there's like zero chance of that. You know who's a good INTJ, I think, though, who does capture some of that same universality, but is I believe, an INTJ, is, thank you, Jesus is Lord. I'll get to your question in a second. The Cars, the guy who does the Cars, the lead singer of the Cars. I think that's the best INTJ band I can think of. In general, I don't like INTJ music, and you can kind of tell what it is. But that guy makes good use of NI, doesn't get too complicated, keeps it simple and straightforward, and isn't an INFJ. Probably INTJ. Okay, what do I think of the rapper? What type do you think the rapper Tupac is? Now, here's the weird thing. I don't really know Tupac for much of anything except for I believe he's in the song California Knows How to Party. And if you like that song, and who doesn't, then you may be familiar with the fact that I believe Tupac's in the video anyway. I had to experience some disappointment this morning. I expected to have 2 Adderalls left, and I only have 1. And I took it, and that's disappointing to me. It's like expectations matter so much. It makes me want to call and hook up more. Because I knew it was going to be the last day, but I expected it to be a little bit more poppy than that, you know. So yeah, I really, unfortunately, not super familiar with Tupac, but from what I understand about other people talking about his lyrics and stuff, he sounds NEFI, but I could be wrong. I would suggest that Ice Cube is probably an INFJ, maybe an ENFJ, probably an ENFJ. Let's see, what other rappers do I have to talk about? Snoop, I would say ISFP or ISTP, one of those two. Yeah, I agree with you, Ron Allen Salon. You can really see how Snoop avoids having to tell stories and stuff. He's so working with the sonic quality of his raps rather than the word qualities of his raps. And that's one of the huge distinctions you can make. You know, the people who are particularly focused on the sonic qualities at the expense of the words or regardless of the words, you don't necessarily have to understand what they're saying always for their raps to be working. Those ones are less likely to be NE, you know, or NI. They're just less likely to be intuitives. Like watching Dominique Young Unique's either Shake That Ass or Shake My Ass or something that's called. Or like, I think it's called Fuck That or something like that. I don't know. She's got a couple of songs that are so very, very ESFP. And so good at the same time. Highly trimmer. I'll put a couple links here. I really enjoy her music. At least these 2 songs, I enjoy them a lot. It was Alan Bryan who introduced me to this person. Interestingly. I mean, I think, yeah, that's such an INFJ move. He's older than me. He's like, it's called Show My Ass. That's what it's called. And he's an INFJ. Depends on the Joker is what people tend to say. I've yet to see a Joker that is verbal, you know, that's primarily word-based. But, I mean, the thing is, awesome comes in all forms in music and rapping, and that includes, and one thing I like so much about Dominique Young Unique, I didn't say the Joker was INFJ. I don't know I think the Joker is ESFP, but I don't know. I don't think Tupac's ESFP. He was too into words. Who's being hostile? Follow hot? Well, I mean, it's hard. It's hard not to call that hostile, I suppose. Yeah, that's probably hostile. Oh, he's incredibly verbal in the comics. Would you ever wear a shirt with your own signature printed on it? I mean, now that you mention it, I might. Just Eric Strauss. That sounds funny. But if you're wearing it to just really be like, yeah, this is me, and you're already like famous or something. I used to have a shirt on that said, my name is Eric. What it said on it. So maybe ENTP? Yes. The answer to that, Ron's Alan Salon, is Pukoki and Frank James did date. And you want to know some juicy gossip? I'll tell you a little juicy gossip. Pukoki came in here not that long after they broke up in the live chat and said, Frank James is not as masculine as he seems in his videos. So I don't know what that means, but that was her complaint or her thing. I bet she never said it again after that. She's way too INFJ to normally verbalize those things. But I remember her saying that. I should make a video called The Real Dirt on Frank James. I bet it would get a shit ton of views. Okay, listen, I've been around this community for a long time since Frank James was little, like me, okay? And I got some actual gossipy dirt for everybody. Shortly after they broke up, I'd have to find it. I could find it, I'm sure. It's around somewhere. It's got to be. It was not necessarily a live stream because I used to do live stream-ish type stuff without live streaming. So it could have been possibly one of the times when I was in a video conference room and she was chatting in there. I don't remember exactly, but I think it was a regular live stream. It was probably right around the time when YouTube first made webcam live streaming. Okay. Because they had before that they had software live streaming. If they did, it's probably taken down. I don't know. I don't think so. But yeah, they did just to date, and that's what she said about him. But the thing is, if I were to do that, if I were to make a video that said that, I'd really be throwing both Pukoki and Frank James under the bus. I don't have a problem with either of them, you know? It would be totally just cashing them in for views. And I'd feel kind of slimy about that, I think. I'm not the inquirer. Oh yeah, I'm very familiar with Queen's Gambit, Sir Thomas. He is very salty indeed. He's probably one of the spied monkeys that comes around here. He's it's not the case that I type everyone who disagrees with me TI polar. I type a particular kind of like hammering wrongness as TI polar usually. And that's because TI polar is pretty distinct in how it displays. Well, I am right now, Fumble Hot, doing something constructive and productive because I have experiential moments as well as non-experiential. You know, I don't spend all my time executing plans, and that's okay. You know, I do spend some of my time executing plans. Are ESFPs more TI polar than ENFPs? No, they're just less capable of faking not being it, I guess. ENFPs are just as TI polar, but they understand TI, I guess, conceptually more without using it at all. they're both frustrating in different ways. ESFPs, it's like a child's come in and keeps throwing rocks at you. ENFPs, it's like they're doing a perfect imitation of you without actually accomplishing anything. You know. And so Thomas, it's not just Queen Gambit who makes videos of shit on me. There's a lot of people who make videos of shit on me. I can think of multiple instances of them. If you Google like host Eric talking with famous people and stuff, you get a shit ton of my videos, but near the top is a bunch of shit on Eric videos too that people make. Winston's mom said there's a new one. Somebody uses a robot voice to, I guess, critique my TI or something. It's very weird to try to critique my TI because if there's any sense that TI has anything to do with logic, then, I mean, I taught logic for years, you know? I taught critical thinking for years. And, no, I've never heard that from an FE polar person, Mackenzie Hoffman, interestingly. That makes sense what you're saying, but I've never heard that from an FE polar person because FI is an absolute value for them. It seems like that would be more likely to come from FI Dom, FI fourth, maybe. I'm not sure. But I've never heard FE polar people say anything like that. I mean, I kind of identify with that. I mean, yeah, it's sort of awkwardness, but it's not necessarily awkward. It's like you know, FE polar it's just a matter of like here's what FE tool does. It's kind of silly, but like 100% consistent. When we're driving in the car, and every time I roll down the window, Rachel rolls down the window. Every time I roll up the window, Rachel rolls up her window. Every time I take a drink of the drink, Rachel takes a drink of her drink. There's this FE mirroring thing that happens, and it's probably maximally attained in the tool slot with a knowledge function first, especially maybe most so with NI because they're not relying on their own habits for things like SI shit, like rolling down the window and or taking a drink of your drink. SI FE is much more likely to manage their SI and their FE separately, right? Whereas NIFE is more likely to just mirror the other person's SI because they're an NI person, right? Here's another way in which Here's another way you can distinguish between NIFE versus SIFE. SIFE has a repertoire of sayings that they repeat over the course of time. Well, I mean, this is one thing that is opposite of that. So Rachel does not find my yawning contagious, because yawning is not like rolling down the window. It's not a willful act of SI. It's a naturally occurring real-time act of SI, right? It's like it's your body doing SI. It's not your mind choosing to do something to adjust for your SI. So she does not find yawning contagious. I think SI types find yawning contagious because that's the other half of SI. It's not a lack of empathy, though. The other thing, what I was getting at, though, about ways to distinguish between NIFE and SIFE, let's say I say to something, if I say to a, no, I think it's an NISI thing, Winston's mom. I do find yawning contagious. I'm SI fourth. Doesn't mean I'm not an intuitive. It just means I'm an SI user. If you're not an SI user, it's not contagious. That's my theory about it. But I want to finish the story about distinguishing SIFE versus NIFE. SIFE has a repertoire of sayings. So if you go outside and you go, brr, if you're an SIFE person, you have a saying that you say when that happens, like my mom did. Yeah, it's cold as a witch's tit. If you're NIFE, you don't have a saying that you go to that you're saying consistently. Instead, you echo what the person says. So we go outside and I go like, it's cold. The NIFE person goes, it sure is cold, or it's cold indeed, or something. They don't have their repertoire of saying. They're still functioning as they're still functioning from an NI first perspective, and then FE. They're receiving stuff and then interfacing with it. Receiving stuff and then interfacing with it. But they're not relying on their SI. It's like they don't have a set of responses that they go to, and they ignore their NE, so they end up mirroring or echoing what the first person says if they don't have anything particular to add to it or whatever. The reason the issue of strength is so hard to resolve is because it's not really a proper vector to describe it as, because it ignores the fact that you've got them in terms of instrumental and absolute values. So you might say polar's the weakest, but it's not really. It's like, for me, FI is an absolute value. It has a more significant role in my life in a lot of ways than TI does. So it really depends on what you mean by strength. Is my NI strong? Well, yeah, but it's also ignored. So it may not, it's a place where I'm likely to make mistakes and or be slowed down. For example, I found myself dragging my feet a bit on this Rachel project because the NI hadn't really come together yet. And I think last night it came together some more. I clarified in my head that the following thing. If I want to do this thing right, I'm not going to be able to find a single set of metaphorical relations that works to move that single set around that moves to that moves from pair to pair. So in other words, when I'm describing, this is a metaphor I came up with last night for basically an action knowledge pair. So the metaphor is for specifically ESTP ISFJ. Rachel has low empathy. Thought you should know you're a psycho. Taylor? So, Hero Lamb says, I'm curious how NI DOMs react to an environment where their NI is not useful or necessary and they have to use other functions to get by. I mean, that was Rachel's situation before she got here for about 10 years. Her NI was, I mean, it's a very SE use of words, okay? It's designed to kick the anthill. And it did. And it caused me to go silent, you know? So here's the thing. Rachel has a lot of empathy. But like most INFJs, she finds the ways of people to be burdensome. If you're an INFJ, you go around in the following state of being. Specifically, you feel as though you've got good clarity about how things ought to be. You feel as though you have good clarity about how the way things are deviates from that. And you're always more subtextually aware of the social implications of everything than everybody around you. You're compelled to be less subtle than you'd like to get messages across a lot of times. And even then, you find that a lot of times you're hamstrung by a larger understanding of how things work socially, and by also an equivalently larger understanding of how people have limited capacity to be told things and to be made to understand things in a positive way. And so I think on some deep level, all INFJs periodically think, God, I hate people. I think that's a fair assessment of INFJs. I think if you were going to be reductive about them, you'd say they're the most soulless type. But that's if you want to be reductive about them. In the sense that they're very attentive to the external world with their FE, but they're still in IDOMs. So the thing is, I don't think it's actually the case that INFJs are the most soulless people or people without a soul, you know. I think that right. So in other words, one dynamic between Rachel and I that is probably typical of an ENTP and an INFJ is the INFJ has a tendency to sigh at the scope of the problem. Okay, in other words, to see holistically how big an issue is and how insurmountable it can be. And the ENTP is looking right in front of them and ignoring the scope of the problem, and then saying, well, why don't we just start doing this and see what happens? That's very liberating for an INFJ, because when they're with an ENTP, they both get understood, which is very unfamiliar to them, like fully understood on an intuitive level. They're dealing with somebody who has the same prioritization of the map that they do, and who frees them from the cage of the truth. Truth is often pretty dark. The thing is, I think the best way to put it is that they're meta-analysts. They are engaging both the frame and the tool as fluid, which is to say, both the rules of the field and the actions on the field are both fluid. So debate is a fluid sport. In debate, you can spend part of your time in debate arguing about whether or not something is against the rules or what the rules are. Those are called theory arguments. Sometimes people run nothing but theory arguments. As soon as their opponent starts reading the thing, they start counting ways in which their opponents are breaking the rules that aren't clearly defined anywhere. So that's an open, right? You can argue about the frames and you can argue about the contentions. A sporting event is closed open. So like a basketball coach is a good job for an ESTP. Why? Because the frame is closed. Nobody in the basketball game gets to argue that really this game we should decide that there are no 3-pointers and successfully change the rules. The rules are always the same. So I mean, the thing is, it's got to be incredibly frustrating for an INFJ, because they're dealing with people who are less deftly understanding the world than they are, and they're trying to interface with these people to get them to understand more deeply, and in doing so, they've got to manage those people's relationships with them. And in other words, the basic strategy of completely earn the other person's trust and know them completely before coming out of your shell ends up getting them accused of being fake, because they're deferring revealing themselves until after the other person's revealed themselves. And that, but of course, that's not fake. That's just the strategy of a knower, It's like, you could say there are 2 kinds of people. You could say there are 4 kinds of people. You could say there are 8 kinds of people. You could say there are 16 kinds of people. 2 kinds of people, what you say is there are subjects and there are agents. Interfacers and action types are subjects. Knowers and deliberators are agents. You could say there are 2 types like this. There are action deliberators and there are interface knowers. You could say there are 4 types. There are knowers, actors, deliberators, interfacers. You could say there are 8 types. There are what you call universalists. That's, your well, if you're going to do 8, you'd say, I guess, there are two kinds of there are action deliberators. They're deliberator action. There's knowledge interface and interface knowledge. And each of those has two kinds. So in other words, you could say there are physical action deliberators, metaphysical action deliberators. There are physical, yeah. The point is, I'm dividing the same amount of data into different sets of similarities and dissimilarities. This is the point I'm trying to make. Is that you can always taxonomy the same piece of information in different frame levels. So it depends what frame level you want to analyze it at. If I want to analyze it just in terms of what I think is kind of the most important thing to talk about as far as people being different from each other, I would say the main difference is between action deliberators and interface knowers. It doesn't matter which order. So whether you're deliberation action or action deliberation, those groups of people are fundamentally different in their worldviews than interface knowers. So what we see is a lot of what you might call ontological assault against one half by the other half. So people like Rachel, who are knower interfaces, are subject to being called fake, especially if they have FE as a tool. They're subject to being called awkward or robotic if they've got TE as a tool. Because why? They're knowers. They're not deliberating. Why aren't deliberator action and knowing interface equally different? What do you mean? I don't understand. ISTPs are deliberators. They're deliberator actors. So, like, they have FE, but they're deliberators. So if you say something to an ISTP and they don't have a response to you, especially let's say you ask them a question or whatever, then they walk away from you and think about it for a bit and come back and tell you an answer. They're not a knower interfacer. A knower interfacer at FE levels will just either echo the person, mirror them, or go to a go-to SI response, The amount of poop in the poop bag this morning is growing larger. So it's like when somebody wants to accuse, when somebody wants to talk about how there's something wrong with a knower, it's going to come out like, meh, 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 meh. When people want to say there's something wrong with an action type, it's going to come out as, it's going to come out as executive function disorder of some kind, right? When people want to say there's something wrong with a deliberator, they're going to say something like probably well, I guess it would depend on what kind of deliberator, but it's like the ISFP, ISTPs are so different than INTPs and INFPs that that one's hard to apply. What people are going to insult all those the same, because the polar is where the insults come from. For the INFP and INTP, they're going to be perceived as failure to launch syndrome, or what you might call just a waste of potential or something. You think behaving the exact same way with everyone you talk to is a bit strange? No, okay, look, when I said executive function disorder, that's not talking about cognitive functions at all. If you talk about to a general psychology community and they want to diss action types, they'll accuse us of having an executive function disorder. Yeah, well, I mean, this is the problem. Is it seems as though judgers are very different than perceivers in general. There's a different dynamic, and the reason is because receiving functions are on different axes, I mean, different metaphysical or physicalities, whereas judging functions are on the same. What do they mean by executive function? They mean the capacity to, well, basically anybody who's impulsive, they'll call somebody, they say that's an executive function disorder. You're failing to execute through something that's already in place. You're instead changing horses midstream. If you change horses in midstream too often, you're accused of having an executive function disorder. But of course, they're not understanding, I guess, that they have multiple function biases. So people go into psychology to fix their function bias, basically, in other people without being aware that it is that. So you'll have groups of scientists who are probably FE DOMs or FE Tool studying the important problem of autism spectrum disorder. In other words, people being awkward. It seems to them there's something wrong with these people. They're awkward. You've got other people studying the field of what's wrong with these people who keep coming up with new ideas and don't follow through on any existing ones. Oh, well, they have ADHD. That's what's wrong with them. It's like TE DOMs dealing with action types, right? And then maybe there are psychologists out there who go, well, we need to deal with what's wrong with these people. The INFPs and INTPs, they have failure to launch syndrome. It's like psychology is just a graveyard of everybody's cognitive function biases. The thing is, I don't think it's the case at all that INFJs, or Rachel specifically, lacks empathy. What I see is, what I've seen from Rachel when she first came here, is the following thing: that she had much more, I guess, connection with my mother as a human being and my mother's interests than either me or my dad did. Which is to say, my dad dismissed everything my mom was doing as not trying to convey any meaning because she wasn't conveying meaning in ways that he obviously understood. I just sort of ignored and I went along with my dad's approach. Rachel came in and started pointing out that my mom was indicating lots of things that we're just not paying attention to, especially my dad, and was very empathetic about my mother, incredibly empathetic, Also with the animals, I'll forget all about the cat, and Rachel will be like, hey, come on in. Hi, Dad.
What's up?
Oh, we're just doing a little live stream. I was about to take a break, actually. So I was about to take a break to go out to my car. Why don't I walk out there with you for a second and we can chat? So anyway, we're gonna take an intermission, everybody. And this is what I do during intermission: is I play some music for them.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was literally about to get up to go get another pack of cigarettes in the car, and I also have to poo in a little bit, so this is a good time. You want to walk out to my car with me? People everywhere gather up in a means outrage that now is a sign. How do they set their priorities? These falling back, stabbing into these. Into it, and I think misery follow necessarily from the savage way. It's all in cars in the desert. We're stuck with such dirty larceny. We all partition like the reason call it destruction of the whole damn world. You share the land. Hoping Julie will do. Very shameful for minutes. In just can't do things like they do. We always thought that she should have got to when she had the chance to buy. She soon forgot about tuning on, although she have a call. People everywhere gather up enemies, outraged at how they miss a sign. How do they send their priorities? These foreign backstabbing entities, ensuing heartache and misery, follow necessarily from the savage ways. Insulting colors in the debris, we're stuck in such petty luxury. We all petition the victories and cause destruction of the whole damn world. 30,000 days, too many expectations, not even worth a damn. 30,000 nights to sleep off the intoxication, otherwise you won't escape the plan. I wasted half my days trying on another's way, but who can tell me my priorities? Is there anybody knows the key? 'Cause I'm tired of doing it wrong. Want direction and have all along. Wait until I know. Or is that just hesitation? Clarity's no good once your chance is gone. What I need to show is it so below my station. I'm tired of doing it wrong. I've wasted half my days trying on others' ways. Who can tell me my priorities? Is there anybody knows the key? 'Cause I think I'm doing this wrong. 'Cause I think I'm doing this wrong. Doing this wrong. Oh, he came here with her. And what's the big problem that you can't endure? You seem so sure it's not appropriate blaming. You blame things on Scott, despite getting caught. He's got you refraining for him, straining for him. Going to the gym, make yourself good enough again. Yeah, you guys both have lots invested. That's not a reason to stay around. Through the years, you've both been tested. Time to move up and higher ground. Oh, he came here with her. And what's the big problem that you can't endure? You seem so sure it's not appropriate blaming. To blame things on Scott, despite getting caught. He's got you refraining for him, straining for him. Going to the gym, make yourself good enough again. Be done with him. Jesus was people, but absent of sin. He must then have struggled with regular men and women, of course, when they too were present. Disciples all warily eyeing the lesson. Lord Jesus, once they're betrayed, easy believing forever is lost. Maybe naive is not to be saved, but the wise pay terrible cost. If people were Jesus, they'd know what they think, and everyone's work would be true. And feelings once spoken would sit where they sing, and we'd all know just what to do. Lord Jesus, once they're betrayed, easy believing forever is lost. Maybe naive is not to be saved, but the wise pay terrible cost. Well, I'm back. I'm back and better than ever. For the first time in all of our lives, everything is wonderful. Isn't that great? Friends don't let friends be ESFP. True words. Truer words have never been spoken. What if you're the villain? What if I'm the villain? Thing is, it's one of the questions that Code Gas keeps making the viewer ask. Have I checked out Red Bar Radio lately? No, I have not. Fresh News 247, and most certainly will not. Although, I mean, I guess it would be interesting enough for me to make a video about it if I were to see and analyze the thing now. And I mean, actually, it's kind of an interesting concept for a video. Of course, you can interview me, Sean. Would you like to do it right now? Yeah, well, my dad did work on a farm as a kid in Pennsylvania. No, I don't want to shoot the shit. So, what's the channel called? It's called Red Bar Radio? Red Bar Video? Or what? Or something else? Or what? I don't know what a 73 question style interview is. Is there 73 questions? And I have to answer them fast? Sure. Do any kind of thing. It's fine. Red Bar. All right. I'm going to mute right now for a second. And I'm going to watch. Actually, you know what I'll do? Instead of being so dumb, be a little bit smarter than that for a change. Just because, just to be wild and different, instead of my normal stupid self. Why don't I plug in the headphones there? Headphones? Yeah, headphones, Eric. Then you can listen to things while talking without getting copyrighted. Hero Lamb, are you trying to tell me that your mouth feels disgusting? What are you doing with it? What are you doing with your mouth, Hero Lamb? What disgusting things are you doing with your mouth? So first, let's change the audio here to meow. And let's see what we got. Here's the link of what I'm looking at. Who's Delia? I don't know who Delia is. What's his deal? I don't know who that is. I have no idea who that is or what his story is. I see Rabbi Radio Guy making fun of his Instagrams. The hack comic. Oh, I don't think about it. Let's see what else we got. Let me give it another shot. What's wrong with ESFPs? Well, Sam Morris falls for the dumbest troll. Um, what do you guys think about? I mean, I want everybody else to evaluate this thing. Is what I want. Let me click another one here. Was that the same one I was just watching? And they already linked? Yeah, it's the same one. Okay. Can I get other people's feedback on this? I'll do it in a little bit, but first I want to address this Red Bar Radio thing. I just can feel myself about to get into. Oh. Okay. All right. Why are you doing this to me? 24/7 news. Why are you doing this to me? Oh, okay. So is this one of those guys who tell the people they need to let go of all their beliefs before watching it? What in the world does that mean? Can anybody help me out here? Can anybody besides me help me out in offering some critique to Fresh News 24/7 about Red Bar? Can anybody please express my position on this thing for me? Does anybody know what it is? Can anybody guess what my position is on this thing? What can I say? I mean, I am sorry to say this. I don't want to get it. I don't want to have a repeat of the fight that I had 20 years ago, but I absolutely hate it. I hate everything about it. I find it impossibly bad in every way, shape, and form. He's more polished at what he's doing now. He's doing the same thing he did back in the day. It's horrible. I hate it. That's my response to it. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm sorry. I'm sure it's you, and I'm sure you'd like me to respond differently to it. I think everything about it is horrible.
That's your opinion. I didn't see it, so. I should say I didn't listen to it.
I mean, I don't have really a very strong opinion about Joe Rogan. I don't really hate Joe Rogan at all. I find Joe Rogan kind of poor man smart talk, but I find that dumb man smart talk, which is worse. That's how I find it. And look, that's me. It's like I don't mean to be shitting on other people's stuff. I used to take a certain amount of glee in shitting on other people's stuff that I no longer do. Now it makes me feel bad. I'm ready to do that interview, Sean. I mean, I don't, even if there are real witches, I don't take any pleasure in hunting and burning them. It's not a sport for me, even if they are real witches, you know? So, Sean, do you want to do that? Are you still here? I'm ready to go, if you are. You want to meet me in autonomy? Meet me in autonomy, then you'll know that's what I gotta go and show. Yeah, I find Joe Rogan a little fourth slot in Irish. Exactly, utter self. Exactly. All right, let's do this shit, Sean. Bye, everybody.